The following video was requested by Kyle Daniels of the Atari Jaguar Fans Facebook group. Are you looking for a new Atari Jaguar game to add to your collection? Well, Mad Professor Mariarti is here, and in limited quantities. Released earlier in the year for 2024 JagFest's event, it was ported by Lawrence Stavely in collaboration with retro preservationist Pico Interactive. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, Pico Interactive is a company who prides themselves on video game preservation and has actively preserved lost games while also supplying distribution to retro homebrews and ports for your aging hardware. Mad Professor Mariarti was originally released in 1991 by Chrysalis Software exclusively on 1980s PCs like the Acorn Archimedes, the Amiga, and Atari ST. That's the same Chrysalis Software who developed Soccer Kid for the Amiga computers in 1993 and also developed Alone in the Dark 1 and 2 for the Panasonic 3DO. The company remained active from 1987 until 2001, creating titles for various platforms and acting as a publisher for various other companies. Mad Professor Mariarti hasn't seen a console release until now, and lucky for you, you own a rare Jaguar console. So the only question is the game worth the buy? Well, let's take a look at the game and see how it compares to its computer versions. First things first, porting a game to the Atari Jaguar is no easy task, but as the homebrew scene grows for the Jaguar community, it becomes increasingly obvious that Atari ST translates well to the Jaguar. As such, when you grab a copy of Mad Professor Mariarti, you are effectively buying a modified version of the Atari ST port. Receiving its first official release on the Acorn Archimedes, Mad Professor Mariarti hit the scene with quality sound and color similar to, if not identical to, the Amiga version, with both offering impeccable graphics and thumping chip-tuned soundtracks that keep the game engaging. Both platforms were miles ahead of the Atari ST in regards to performance and graphics, but that didn't mean the Atari ST version was a lightweight. In fact, according to online reviews from critics worldwide, the most sold version of the game was on the Atari ST, which was scaled down to meet the hardware requirements. The Atari version quickly became a welcomed addition to the Atari ST video game library. The biggest difference the ST version has compared to Amiga and Acorn was that due to the limitations of the platform, hardware scrolling was not supported. So instead, to combat this, the ST version opted in for rooms that the player could navigate. Enemy AI could walk between rooms and offer a bit of challenge to the game on the account of not seeing what's coming on the other side. At its release for the ST, the Atari 520 ST was the mainline market as opposed to the Atari TT, and as such, Mad Professor Mariarti for the Atari ST is specifically a 16-bit game. The Atari ST is part of the 1632-bit generation of home computers, which means some models are 32-bit. The ST in the name references 1632, which calls attention to the Motorola 68000 16-bit external bus and 32-bit internals, whereas the Atari TT references the 3232. The Atari ST came in a variety of versions. The 520 ST, which was the original model with 512 kilobytes of RAM, external power supply, and no floppy disk drive. A newer model would later be released called the 520 ST Plus, which was the same as the original model 520 ST, but with double the RAM for a whopping 1 megabyte of RAM, a pretty big deal at the time. There was also the 520 STM, which came with a built-in modulator for TV output and 512 kilobytes of RAM, and a later version also called the 520 STFM, which had a redesigned motherboard and a larger case with a built-in floppy disk drive, also containing 512 kilobytes of RAM. Lastly, there was a more powerful version known as the 1040 STFM, which was a 520 STFM with 1 megabyte of RAM and a built-in double-sided floppy disk drive with RF modulation. There were also other variables in between, but we don't have time to cover all of that here. Therefore, moving on, you might be wondering, how does the game itself hold up on the Jaguar and how does it compare to Atari ST's ancestors? Well, let's find out. In the game, your objective is simple. Solve the puzzles and outwit your enemies while avoiding obstacles and pitfalls. Mad Professor Mariarti can be beaten in a quick 35 to 40 minutes provided you know where to go. The game has 5 main levels and dozens upon dozens of obstacles, all unique to the respective level. The premise of the game is that you're a well-known crazy scientist who has made a variety of contraptions for your community, and everything in your laboratory has gone awry. The mayor of your town has now become subjective to your antics, and he asks that you shut down your laboratories once and for all, or else it's off to the loony bin for you. For me, first impressions on the Jaguar were a bit clunky. And it's a bit unfair to say that a game is clunky because of a controller, but for the Jaguar, that is nothing unusual. Response time and controls feel about what you would expect on the Jaguar, and once you get used to it, the game starts to feel more fluid, and you find yourself ignoring the clunkiness overall. Compared to other versions of the game, the Jaguar port has muted colors and gives off an almost blended look to the environment. Here's a comparison of coloration and sprite variation. This is mostly in part to how the Jaguar handles color compared to PC, and during my research I was a little confused about how the Jaguar displays and processes color mathematically, so I did what any other Jaguar owner would do. I did the math. And then I realized I sucked at math and asked the man himself. I inquired about how the Atari ST and the Jaguar handled color, and this was the response that I received. Speaking of Jaguar info, I couldn't find a clear answer online. In a quick search, it says in Wikipedia that the Jaguar is capable of 16.2 million colors at one time, but the ST only supports 512. I presume the 16.2 million was in regards to the pixels on the screen at one time. If the Panther was capable of 8,000 plus colors at a time, what is the Jaguar's color display? Reboot. No, that's the palette size. The ST is 8 bits, RGB, 512 colors to select from. The Jaguar is 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and 24-bit. Reboot would go on to state that during the porting process he did his best to get colors to match as much as possible. Using CRY, the Jaguar's 16-bit graphic processing allows for a total of 65,000 colors in its palette. There wasn't too many modifications made to get the game to run on the Jaguar, but there were some considerable changes that needed to be done, like music modifications and optimized frame rate. Sound is smooth, gameplay works as intended, and aside from the occasional lag from too many sprites in one place, something common in ST ports, overall you end up with a pretty solid gaming experience. When I asked about performance pertaining to the port, Reboot had this to say: "They're all challenging in their own way, nothing ever goes according to plan." Although personally I never noticed any significant differences between sound and audio, I inquired once more and he had this to say: "As for in-game mechanics, the purpose of the game is simple. You start off in a room with 5 doors, and the first 4 doors you can take in any order you choose. You can't access the 5th door until you complete the first 4, and you can't leave the laboratory without receiving a swift foot to the gut. The level of difficulty varies with each room, but I recommend taking the rooms from hardest to easiest, as it makes the game feel more casual. But make no mistake, regardless of which room you choose, there will be all sorts of puzzles and pitfalls to deal with. Controls are simple enough. B is used to engage your weapons. C does a multitude of things from jumps to climbing ladders and engaging with objects or opening doors. And you can climb down ladders by simply pressing down on the D-pad. You can navigate the inventory wheel by holding B and pressing up and down. To activate objects or switches, you press C to jump in front of the switches. Pay attention to your text box above your health meter, as it will tell you when you can engage with something, and it will also drop subtle hints to help solve puzzles. One of the biggest issues that I had with the game is that sometimes it's hard to know what's dangerous and what's not, so if you feel like you're at a dead end and can't get across, the only option is to mess around and find out. The game definitely has a handful of trial and error experiences and is certain to tickle your brain as you play. Among other things, you'll stumble across a good amount of tokens that you can exchange at nearby vendors' machines, and select a variety of weapons at your crafty little disposal. My personal opinion is that Mad Professor Mariarti is a charming game with loads of wacky and zany ideas that could only be the product of the 1990s. It's got a lot of challenge with just the right amount of charm, from giant robots and walking floppy disks to the idle animation where he knocks on your screen. Perfect for anyone playing this on a classic CRTV or monitor. From the hidden Doctor Who reference to the dancing skeletons, lopsided walking beakers, and the zany Insane Asylum animation at the end, Mad Professor Mariarti is one game you don't want to miss out on in your Atari Jaguar collection. Do I recommend getting a copy of Mad Professor Mariarti for your Jaguar? Absolutely. And if you're a collector like me, the JagFest exclusive is in limited quantities and scalpers have already jacked up the prices. So grab your copy from jjgames.com before they're all gone. If you liked this video, please feel free to check my other videos, and if you'd like a special shout out in a future video, drop a comment below with the name of the game you think that I should review soon. If I like your answer, I just might pick you for a free shout out. Anyways guys, I've been Kaz Denizan with Kraz Productions, and thank you for watching.